A boy, caught in a battle between light and darkness, discovers a truth that could shatter everything he's ever known. His fate, once written by the shadows, is now in his hands. But when an ancient force rises to claim what's his, will he have the strength to defy destiny? Or will the darkness consume him forever? Stay with me until the end, because what happens next will leave you breathless. And remember, if this story moved you, if you felt the intensity of every twist and turn, don't miss the next chapter. Hit that subscribe button and join this unforgettable journey. Together we'll uncover the truth, one story at a time. The air was thick with tension. The ground was soft and damp, soaked from the recent rain. The boy, no older than 7, stood trembling. His small hands shook as he pointed to the spot in front of him. His voice, barely a whisper, carried the weight of something unspeakable. "Please," he begged, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and urgency. "Dig here." The men around him exchanged glances, unsure of what to do. But there was something in the boy's eyes, something that made them hesitate for just a moment. One of the men, a tall figure with a rugged face, knelt down and began to scrape away the dirt. The sound of the shovel hitting the earth was strangely loud in the silence. With each scoop, the tension in the air grew thicker, like the very atmosphere was holding its breath. The boy watched closely, his hands clasped together as if praying. His eyes never left the spot, his lips trembling as if ready to speak, but no words came. The dirt piled up beside them, and the hole grew deeper. The air smelled of earth and damp wood, a smell that seemed to seep into the very bones of those standing around. Finally, the shovel hit something hard. Collective breath was held. The man leaned in, brushing away the last of the soil. And there, buried in the earth, was something that no one expected. Small wooden box. The men exchanged confused looks, their expressions unreadable. With trembling hands, the man lifted the box from the hole. It was old, the wood weathered and cracked, as if it had been buried for decades. He pried it open slowly. Inside was a bundle wrapped in tattered cloth. The boy's eyes never left the box, and his hands gripped the edge of the shovel tightly. As the cloth was peeled back, the men gasped. There, nestled in the cloth, was an old, faded photograph. It was a picture of a woman, her face blurred by age, but unmistakably familiar. It was the boy's mother. But what made the men freeze was the symbol on the photograph. A symbol none of them recognized, but one that had been whispered about in legends. The boy's tears fell freely now, his voice breaking as he whispered, "She said I had to find it. She said it would explain everything." The men stood motionless, their minds racing, trying to piece together what had just happened. But the boy's next words shattered the quiet. She's been waiting for me to bring it back." The air felt colder now. The ground beneath them seemed to pulse with an eerie life of its own. There was no turning back. The truth was now out there, buried in the earth for so long. And the boy was the key to it all. The boy's voice trembled as he spoke, his words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "She said I had to bring it back," he repeated, his voice barely audible now, but the weight of those words pressed on everyone. The men stood motionless, the photograph still held in the hands of the one who had uncovered it. It was almost as though time had stopped, the world spinning slower with every heartbeat. The boy's gaze shifted from the photograph to the darkening sky above them. A storm was approaching, the wind picking up, pulling at the leaves of the trees, sending ripples across the quiet, stagnant air. The world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something. The man who had dug up the box slowly straightened up. His hands shook as he passed the photograph to another man, the weight of it too much for him to bear. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. The boy's words, the photograph, the symbols on it, all of it was too much to understand, too much to grasp in the span of a few seconds. But in their hearts, they all felt the same cold knot tighten around their chests. Something was wrong. The boy's eyes glazed over, his mind wandering to a place no one else could follow. His lips parted, and he whispered something under his breath, so soft it was almost a prayer. She never told me everything. Only that I had to come back. That I had to find the box. And that it would all make sense when I did. The man who had been holding the photograph stepped forward. His face was pale. His brow furrowed in confusion and fear. Who was she?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Your mother." The boy nodded, but there was no joy in his expression, no sense of comfort. "She wasn't my real mother," the boy said, his voice cracking as he spoke. "She told me that I was special, that I wasn't like other kids." The others exchanged confused glances. "Special how?" another man asked, his voice low, careful. The boy took a deep breath, his small body trembling with the weight of the truth that he was about to reveal. "She said I was born for something else. That I had a purpose. A purpose I wouldn't understand until I was older." The wind howled louder, as if to drown out his words, and the leaves rustled violently in the trees. A strange unease filled the air. Something dark and powerful was stirring, and it wasn't just in the boy. The boy stepped forward, his eyes wild now, looking between the men. "That symbol on the photo," he said, pointing at the image of his mother. "It's the mark of the unseen. My mother warned me about them. They've been watching me all my life. They knew what I would do, where I would go." The men stiffened, their faces draining of color. One of the men, the eldest of the group, stepped back, his breath catching in his throat. "The unseen," he whispered. "I've heard stories, but I never thought they were true." The boy's expression darkened. His tears had dried, replaced by a quiet, growing fury. "They're real," the boy said, his voice firm, unshaken by the fear that now gripped the others. "And they're coming for me. They've always been coming for me." Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. It wasn't an earthquake. No, this was something different. The earth seemed to pulse, as if it were alive, responding to something. A deep, hollow sound rose from the depths of the earth, as though something had awakened far beneath them. The boy gasped, his body tensing, every muscle locked in terror. The men froze, their eyes wide with fear, scanning the horizon for the source of the sound. It was the kind of sound that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. The kind of sound that seemed to come from another world. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. Silence. The boy stood there, shaking, his hands clutched tightly at his sides. "They're here," he whispered, the terror in his voice so raw it could have torn apart the night. "They've found me." The men began to back away slowly, their eyes never leaving the boy. There was something about him now, something that felt both unnatural and terrifying. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with a strange, unnerving grace. It was cloaked in darkness, its face obscured, but there was no mistaking the power it exuded. The air grew colder. The wind began to howl once more, as if it were responding to the arrival of this presence. The boy's eyes locked onto the figure, his expression one of recognition. "They're here for the box," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "and they're not leaving without it." The figure stepped forward, its movements fluid, almost predatory. The men backed away, their faces full of panic. "Who are you?" one of them shouted. "What do you want with the boy?" The figure's voice was deep, almost hypnotic, as it answered. "We have waited for this moment for centuries. The boy is the key, and the box is the answer. You should not have interfered." The wind screamed, and the ground beneath them seemed to tremble once more. The earth groaned, as though it were alive with the knowledge of something ancient and powerful. The boy's breath quickened. He turned to the men, his face filled with desperate emotion. "I told you," he said, his voice breaking. "I told you they were coming. I told you this would happen." His words were lost in the wind as the figure raised its hand, an unsettling energy pulsing from it. The earth around them began to crack open, the ground splitting apart as though it had been waiting for this moment all along. The men screamed, but their cries were swallowed by the deepening darkness. And as the boy stood frozen, unable to move, he realized with a cold shiver that there was no escaping the truth now. The unseen were here. And they had come for him. The boy's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the figure before him, the darkness swirling around it like a cloak made of shadows. His breath caught in his throat, the reality of what he had feared for so long finally unfolding before his eyes. There was no escaping it now. The ground beneath them groaned again, deeper this time, as if the earth itself was being torn apart by some invisible force. The wind picked up, a deafening roar that drowned out everything else, as if the world itself was mourning the impending doom. The boy felt a cold chill seep into his bones. His body was trembling, not from the wind, but from the raw terror of what he was about to face. The tears had stopped, but a dull ache settled deep inside him. He had been warned, yes, but no amount of warning could have prepared him for this. The figure in front of him moved closer, its presence suffocating, like the air around it had turned to stone. It didn't speak, but the boy felt its gaze upon him, heavy and full of hunger, like it had been waiting for this moment since the dawn of time. "Please," the boy's voice cracked, a whisper lost in the howling wind. "I don't want this. I never wanted this." The figure tilted its head, as if considering him, as if the boy's fear amused it. It was an unsettling, predatory motion. "You never had a choice," it finally spoke, its voice low, reverberating in the boy's chest. "You were always meant to be here, meant to bring us the key. And now it is time." The boy felt his knees give way. He collapsed to the ground, his hands clutching at the dirt, his eyes darting between the men and the shadowed figure. But it was no use. The men, the ones who had stood by him, were now backing away, their faces pale, filled with terror. They had no answers. One man, the one who had held the photograph, looked at the boy with a mixture of pity and fear. His voice barely a whisper. "Are you sure, boy? Is this really what your mother wanted? Was this the reason you were brought here?" The boy's chest tightened. His throat felt dry, and his voice barely formed the words. She didn't want this for me. She didn't want me to be caught in this fight. But they are after me. After the key." The ground trembled again, the earth beneath them splitting open wider, the deep rumble vibrating through their bones. The boy could feel the pulse of something ancient and powerful beneath them, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to any human being. The figure stepped forward, its movement slow and deliberate, like it was savoring the moment. The air grew colder, the wind cutting like ice. The boy could hear nothing but the deafening roar in his ears. "You cannot run from your fate," the figure said, its voice echoing in the boy's mind. "The key is yours to unlock, and you will hand it over. You have no choice." The boy's body trembled violently. His hands clenched into fists, the dirt beneath his nails sharp against his skin. His heart thudded painfully in his chest as he struggled to stand, to move, to do anything. But he was paralyzed. Behind him, one of the men gasped, pointing at the ground. The boy turned his head, his eyes widening as he saw what had caused the commotion. The earth, split open, had revealed something more horrifying than he could have imagined. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at him, ancient and empty, from within the depths of the earth. They were the eyes of something older than time itself, something that had waited for eons to rise again. The boy felt a cold wave of dread wash over him as the eyes seemed to focus on him, pulling him into their gaze. "They are here," the boy whispered, his voice shaking. "The unseen. They're here and they're coming for the box. They will not stop until they have it." The men around him froze, their faces drained of all color. The weight of the boy's words settled on them, heavy and suffocating. They could see it now. The unseen were not just myths or legends. They were real, and they were after the boy. They were after the key. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the boy fell to his knees, the force of the tremor throwing him off balance. His hands scraped the dirt as he tried to catch himself. The men shouted in fear, but their words were drowned out by the sound of cracking earth. The boy's mind raced. He could hear his mother's voice in his head, telling him to run, telling him to leave before it was too late. But it was too late for that now. The moment of truth had arrived, and there was no escaping it. The figure loomed over him, its dark cloak swirling around it like smoke. "You cannot run from your destiny, boy," it said. "You have no choice now. The box must be opened. You must unlock the secrets that lie within. And you will." The boy's heart pounded harder, the weight of the figure's words pressing down on him. His hands shook, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "I don't understand," he gasped. "What do you want from me?" The figure's voice was cold and unyielding. "Your purpose is greater than you can comprehend. The key. It must be given to us. You are the final piece of the puzzle, the last link in a chain that has been centuries in the making. Do not fight what is inevitable." The boy tried to move, to scream, but his body felt like lead. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't think. In the distance, a sound rose, faint at first but growing louder with every passing second. It was the sound of footsteps, heavy and purposeful, echoing through the earth. The boy looked up in horror, realizing that the unseen were not alone. They were not the only ones after the box. "Help me!" the boy screamed, his voice breaking, desperate. "Someone, please help me." But the men were gone. They had fled. The fear was too great for them to bear. The boy was left alone in the presence of the figure and whatever horrors lay beneath the earth. The figure raised its hand, the energy radiating from it palpable, crackling in the air. It was going to take him. It was going to take the boy. The figure's hand rose higher, its dark energy swirling like a storm cloud above it. The air itself seemed to bend and pulse, suffocating the boy, trapping him in a cage of dread. His heart pounded in his chest, the sound deafening in his ears, drowning out everything else. His legs felt like they were made of stone, unable to move, unwilling to move. He wanted to scream again, to cry out for help, but the words caught in his throat. The fear, the weight of everything that had led him here, was crushing him. His entire life had been a string of whispers and half-answers, but now, in this moment, everything was clear. The boy's mind raced, flashing through memories. His mother's warnings, the strange symbols, the box that had been buried for so long. But the most haunting memory of all was the look in her eyes the night she told him the truth. The truth about the unseen. "They are coming for you," she had said. "The key is your destiny, and you must not let them take it. No matter what happens, you must not let them have it." And now, as he stood on the precipice of everything she had warned him about, he realized with a terrible certainty that there was no escaping. The figure moved closer, its voice like gravel, dragging itself from the depths of the earth. "You are the last of your kind," it whispered, "the last of those who carry the key. You cannot escape what is already written." The boy's hands trembled violently at his sides, his chest tight as the realization hit him. There was no running, no hiding. They had been waiting for this moment. They had been waiting for him. Suddenly, a surge of defiance washed over him. It was faint, but it was there. He couldn't just let this happen. He couldn't let them take everything his mother had fought for. With every ounce of strength he could summon, he gathered his courage and forced his trembling legs to move. The figure's eyes locked onto his, cold and unyielding, but the boy didn't stop. He ran. The earth beneath him seemed to rebel, trembling and cracking as though it were alive, but the boy didn't stop. His feet pounded against the ground, the sound of his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Behind him, he could hear the figure's voice, rising above the chaos, low and menacing. "You cannot outrun destiny, boy. It will find you." But the boy didn't care. He had to try. For himself. For his mother. He couldn't let it end like this. He couldn't let them win. The wind howled as he ran, but his legs were growing heavier, his breath coming in gasps, each step harder than the last. The world around him blurred, the trees, the sky, everything blending into one dark, indistinct smear of shadows. And then, as if in answer to his desperate need, something shifted. The ground ahead of him cracked open with a deafening roar, the earth splitting wide like the mouth of some great beast. The boy stumbled to a halt, his eyes wide in terror. What had happened? What was this? A deep, guttural sound rumbled from the fissure in the ground, an ancient noise, as if the earth itself was crying out. From the darkness below, a figure rose. Shadow. An entity darker than anything the boy had ever seen. Its form was indistinct, constantly shifting like smoke taking on form. But its eyes burned with a terrible molten light. The boy felt his blood run cold. This was no mere figure. This was something far older, far more powerful. "You cannot escape," the figure boomed, its voice like thunder. "You cannot run from your purpose." The boy's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. His mind was screaming at him to run, but his body was betraying him. The fear had paralyzed him, locked him in place as the darkness moved closer. The earth shook again, but this time it wasn't just the tremor beneath his feet. No, it was the air itself that trembled. The very atmosphere seemed to pulse, as if every living thing was holding its breath. There was something deeper than fear. There was an energy in the air, a presence so overwhelming it made the boy feel small, helpless. "Please," the boy whispered, his voice hoarse, barely audible. "Please. I don't understand. What do you want from me?" The shadowed entity stopped in front of him, its molten eyes staring down at him with ancient contempt. "What do I want from you?" the figure asked, its voice now a slow, mocking whisper. "Everything. Everything you are, everything you have, everything you will ever be. You are the final piece of the puzzle, the one who will open the door to a power beyond your understanding. You were born for this." The boy's breath caught. He tried to speak, but no words came out. The figure stepped closer, the heat from its body so intense that the air around him seemed to shimmer. The ground beneath the boy's hands cracked again, and he felt a strange pressure against his chest, like an invisible force pushing him down. "You are nothing but a vessel, a key. And you will do as you are told." The boy's mind raced. There was no way he could do this. No way he could fulfill whatever twisted fate the unseen had set for him. But there was something deep down that told him he could fight back. He could resist. If only he could remember what his mother had said. "You were born for something else. Something greater." The words echoed in his mind, giving him a brief flash of clarity. Suddenly, a memory surged forward. His mother, sitting by the fire, whispering to him in the dead of night. "The key is not just for them. You must decide. If you unlock it, you unlock your destiny. But it is yours to choose." His heart raced. She had told him that he could choose. He wasn't just a pawn. He had a choice. With newfound determination, the boy staggered to his feet, his body trembling, but his resolve stronger than it had ever been. "No," he said, his voice shaky but defiant. "I won't do what you want. I won't open it for you." The figure laughed, a sound so cold, so hollow that it made the boy's blood freeze. "You think you can defy destiny?" the entity asked, its voice rising in fury. "You have no power here. You are nothing. You are a child." But the boy didn't flinch. He stood his ground, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "I am not your key," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I am not your pawn. And I will not let you win." The world seemed to tremble once more, the very ground beneath them shaking with the intensity of the battle of wills. But this time the boy stood tall. He knew what he had to do. This was his fight, his destiny. And no one, no matter how powerful, could take that from him. The shadowed entity stood before the boy, its eyes glowing with molten fury, its form radiating an oppressive force that seemed to seep into the very air around them. The wind howled as if responding to the figure's rage, its gusts twisting the trees, sending their branches clawing at the dark sky above. The world felt alive, but it was a twisted, distorted kind of life. a breathless, suffocating existence, where everything was slowly being drawn into the pull of something far older, far darker than anything the boy had ever known. But despite the overwhelming fear that gripped his heart, the boy stood his ground. "I am not your key," he repeated, his voice firm now, though it trembled with the rawness of his emotions. "I am not your puppet, and I will not unlock the door for you." For a moment the figure did not move. The silence between them stretched long and suffocating. The boy's chest heaved with the weight of the moment. Every muscle in his body was burning with exhaustion. His mind clouded with uncertainty, but there was one thing that he knew deep in his bones. He had to resist. If he didn't, everything his mother had warned him about, everything he had feared, would come to pass. The figure let out a low, guttural laugh that reverberated through the ground beneath them. It was a laugh of something ancient and cruel, as if the very idea of defiance was a bitter joke to it. "You do not understand, child," the figure said, its voice like the scraping of stone. "You are nothing without us. You cannot defy what you are meant to become. You were born for this moment. You were born to open the door." The boy's breath came in ragged gasps as the figure took another step forward, its dark energy pulling at the very fabric of the world. The boy felt a pressure against his chest, like invisible hands were squeezing the air from his lungs. His knees trembled, but he refused to fall. "You're wrong," the boy said, his voice barely a whisper now, but there was a defiance in it that burned brighter than ever before. "I may not know everything. I may not understand it all. But I know this, my mother wasn't wrong. Have a choice. This isn't my fate. It's yours. And I will fight for it." The figure paused. Its eyes flickered with something: surprise, amusement. For the first time, the boy saw something other than rage in the figure's gaze. It was as if, in that one brief moment, the entity considered him. The boy's heart raced, the anticipation thickening the air around them. "You think you can change what's been set in motion for centuries," the figure said, its tone colder now, calculating. "You are just a child, fragile thing. You cannot stand against what is inevitable." "I'm not just a child," the boy said, his voice gaining strength. "I'm more than what you think I am. I don't know what's coming, but I will not let you take control of my life, of my future." The earth beneath him trembled again, but this time it wasn't the earth shaking. It was his own heart pounding with a desperate fury. His mind flashed to the moment he first opened the box, to the image of his mother, to the warning she had given him. And now, in the depths of his terror, a clarity surged through him. He was not powerless. He was not trapped in a predestined life. The figure's expression twisted into a snarl, its molten eyes burning brighter with a fury that seemed to ignite the air itself. "You dare resist," it hissed, its voice rising with each word. "You dare defy us." The boy's body trembled with the intensity of it, but something inside him hardened, something stronger than the fear, stronger than the terror. He clenched his fists until his nails cut into his palms, grounding himself in the pain. "I do," the boy said, every word thick with emotion. "I dare." Suddenly, the figure's dark energy surged forward, a storm of darkness lashing out at him, wrapping around him like a suffocating net. The boy gasped as the air grew thick, the pressure crushing him from all sides. His legs shook, and for a split second, it felt like his very bones were going to snap under the force. But in that moment, he remembered something. The words his mother had said when she held him in her arms, comforting him in the darkness of their home, whispering in his ear as if she were trying to protect him from a nightmare that had only just begun. "The key is not just for them. You must decide. If you unlock it, you unlock your destiny. But it is yours to choose." With a sudden surge of defiance, the boy gathered every ounce of his strength and reached out, his hand trembling as he grasped the box. The image of his mother, the light in her eyes as she warned him, filled his mind. "I choose," he whispered through clenched teeth. "I choose my own path." The moment the boy spoke those words, a shock wave of energy erupted from within him. The dark force that had wrapped itself around him recoiled, faltering as if it had been struck. For the first time, the boy felt a surge of something far more powerful than the figure in front of him. A power that came from within, from his very core. The earth shook again, but it was different now. It wasn't just the dark force, it was the boy's own energy, his will, pushing back against the darkness. The figure faltered, its eyes widening with a flicker of uncertainty. "No!" it screamed, its voice raw with anger. "You cannot stop this. You are mine." The boy shook his head, his breath coming in sharp, desperate gasps. "I am not yours. I never was. And I will never be." In that moment, the ground beneath them split open wider, the fissure stretching like a mouth eager to devour everything in its path. But the boy didn't back down. He stood tall, his eyes locked onto the figure's molten gaze, his heart a storm of defiance and fear. "You can try to take everything," the boy said, his voice steady now. "But you will never have me." And with that, he released the last of his strength, pushing his energy forward. His will a force that rippled through the very fabric of the earth. The figure shrieked, its form distorting as the power of the boy's defiance collided with the dark energy that had controlled him for so long. The air exploded with a blinding light, the force of it so overwhelming that it shook the world around them. The ground cracked, the trees bent and swayed as if they were being ripped from their roots. The boy's vision blurred as the energy collided with the figure, his entire body shaking with the force of it. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. The light faded, leaving nothing but the stillness of the night. The wind calmed, the earth's tremors ceased, and for the first time, the boy could hear nothing but the sound of his own breath. He slowly opened his eyes. The figure was gone. The boy stood alone, trembling but victorious. The power that had once threatened to consume him was gone. The earth had returned to silence. And for the first time the boy understood. He wasn't just the key. He was the lock. And he had chosen to close the door. The storm was over. But a new chapter was just beginning. As the dust settled and the silence enveloped the boy, he stood there, his body trembling but his heart slowly finding its rhythm again. The storm had passed, the air cleared, and the oppressive weight that had held him captive was gone. But it wasn't over. Not yet. He knew the peace he felt was fragile, like the calm before a storm, and in the depths of his soul, a lingering dread still clung to him. He looked around, his eyes scanning the landscape that had once seemed so full of life and energy, now eerily still. The dark entity had vanished, but the boy knew deep in his bones that this wasn't the end. It was merely a beginning he couldn't yet understand, but one he would have to face with strength he wasn't sure he possessed. The ground where the figure had stood was empty now. The rift had closed, leaving nothing but cracked earth behind. The boy took a hesitant step forward, his feet dragging through the dirt, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "You must decide, child. You must choose." He had chosen. And yet, something told him the true battle was only beginning. Behind him, the forest, once so alive with the sounds of nature, now stood eerily quiet. It was as if the world itself was waiting for something, waiting for the boy to move, to take the next step. But even though the shadows had lifted, the boy couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting for him to make another choice. A shadow moved in the distance. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. For a moment, he thought it might be the same entity, returning to finish what it had started. But when he turned around, it was not the figure. It was a small, familiar figure, the boy's mother. But she wasn't quite the same. Her face was soft with a gentle smile, but her eyes glowed with an ethereal light, the kind of light that spoke of knowledge and power far beyond human understanding. "You're not alone," she said, her voice as soft and comforting as it had always been. "You never were." The boy felt his heart leap in his chest. "But I thought you were gone." She shook her head, her smile deepening. "I never left you. I was always here in the shadows, guiding you, watching over you." Tears filled the boy's eyes. I didn't know how to fight them, Mother. I thought I was just a child. A tool for something bigger. But now, I know I have the power to stop them. Yes, she said, her voice full of pride. You have always had the power, my child. But now you have the wisdom to understand it. The choice was always yours. To unlock the door or to close it. To give in or to stand strong. And you chose. You chose your own path. The boy looked up at the sky, the first rays of dawn breaking through the horizon. He felt a strange sense of peace, but also a deep, resonating fear. The journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. But in that moment, as he stood beside his mother, he realized that he wasn't alone anymore. The shadows might return. The darkness might rise again. But he was ready. He wasn't just a boy anymore. He was a force to be reckoned with. And nothing, not even the unseen, could take that away from him. As the wind picked up, whispering through the trees, the boy stood tall, his heart steady and strong. The choice was his, and he would face whatever came next with unwavering resolve. But just before he turned to walk forward, a thought struck him, a small but undeniable truth. This story wasn't just his. It was theirs. All those who had stood by him, who had believed in him, even when he had no faith in himself. And so, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else, this is just the beginning. And if you've been touched by this story, if you've journeyed with this boy and felt the weight of his struggle, then I invite you to join me on this incredible adventure. Stories like this are just the beginning, and I have so much more to share with you. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and become a part of this journey. Together we'll unlock the next chapter, and who knows? Maybe we'll face the darkness again, but this time we'll be ready. Thank you for watching. And remember, the best stories are the ones we share together.